In his view, Devipuram was not just a physical, this geographical place where you come to these temples and you worship and go. But Devipuram is actually a place in everybody's heart, because that is where Devi resides, in everybody's hearts. So the entire concept of Devipuram is that everybody should find their own true purpose and their true nature. And Devipuram is here to help people to find that.
Investigating the wonder of consciousness, the nature of mind, the miracle of the body. We'll talk with elders, lineage holders, seekers, scholars, and practitioners from diverse wisdom traditions to explore the precious convergence of the being, the psyche, and life itself, and how we can use the alchemy inherent to that meeting point for transformation. I'm Laura Karate, and this is the delicate business of being human. Courting the mystery, weaving the story, and bringing it all back home to the body. Hi friends, this week we're going to India. We'll be joined by Rama Amma Kandarpa, and we'll be visiting Devipuram Ashram and Temple in Andhra Pradesh. Rama Amma is the daughter of Guruji Amritanandanath Saraswati of the Sri Vidya tradition. And Rama Amma will be speaking to us about Guruji's life, his trajectory, his mission, and his very unusual project of building a temple in the form of Sri Chakra, or the Sri Yantra, which is a geometric form that is deeply sacred and important in the Sri Vidya lineages and others. We'll be hearing about Guruji's life and about this incredibly complex mission of building this temple. We'll also see what's happening now, where things are, and what it's like to visit. We'll learn a little bit about Sri Vidya, and we'll learn a lot about Guruji. If you haven't spent time in India or studying the Indic traditions, there might be some terms or some usage or some references that you aren't really familiar with. So if you're watching the video, and there is always a video, I have done my best to put visual cues and explainers inside the videos so that some of the words that might be unfamiliar can be understood from context. So today we welcome Rama Amma from Devipuram, where we are currently located. And Devipuram is a place that's very special to my heart and very special in the world. There's no place like it. And I wanted to give us all an opportunity to be here a little bit and speak a little bit about what Devipuram is, what Sri Vidya is, and what is happening here. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Oh, that's fine.
And to share a little bit of the magic and the beauty of this place, which is what I'm hoping to share with others.
Pleasure. It's a pleasure. And yeah, so let me just introduce to you what Devipuram is all about.
Please.
To understand about Devipuram, we have to go back a little bit to understanding about Guruji, the man behind Devipuram.
The man behind everything.
Or the couple behind Devipuram, Guruji and Amma. So Guruji, formerly known as Dr. Prahalada Sastry, he was a nuclear scientist working in Bombay, and very much, an absent-minded professor, a scientist, fully engrossed in his scientific pursuit. He was on several defense research projects. He was pretty much an atheist. He did not do any pujas or anything of those sorts. In fact, at home, it was always Amma or our mother who used to do all the pujas and everything. Even going to temples, he would never come inside a temple. So he had a rather vivid experience in the year 1977 when he had gone on a conference to Hyderabad. It was a 3-4 day conference, and one of the days, early morning, he wasn't able to sleep properly. So it was about 4 o'clock, 3:34. So he just came out from the hotel, came down and was just walking on the road without any conscious thought that I have to go here or there. And in front of him, he saw a very old man walking, and he started following that old man. And that old man went up the steps of a temple, which is called the Birla temple. It is actually a Venkateshwara temple. So he went inside the temple behind this man. Okay. And that old man went inside and prostrated before the Lord, Venkateshwara. And Guruji also felt a similar urge to do that full prostration. And when he did that prostration, then something very magical happened. He had a very good darshan of Bala, the Devi. It was a Venkateshwara temple which is related to Vishnu, but he had the darshan of Devi as Bala. And he doesn't know how long he was in that state, but when he came back to his senses, he asked the local priests, the Purohits who were there, where is this old man who came before me? They said, nobody came. You were the only person to come in. So that stirred things up for him in his mind. It was not the first time that he had such an experience, in fact. He then recalled that when he was very young, around 7 to 11, that age, he used to see lots of visions. He used to see, like for example, Krishna playing his flute in the trees, and he used to call out to his friends and say, there, can you see Krishna? And they said, oh, we can't see anybody, you're just joking. And one day he had a very, very vivid experience. This was as a young boy. He was lying on the ground looking up at the sky, and very large globules of light were just coming into him and getting inside of him. So just coming at him and getting inside of him. And he remembered that incident. And after that incident, what had happened was he developed a very high fever. And thereafter, all those visions had stopped. So this he remembered again at the age of 43, 44, when he had the vision at the Venkateshwara temple.
So he hadn't at all been involved in that kind of reality, in that kind of world. He was very rational,
very rational. Because after that, he studied science. He did his master's in science in Andhra University, in nuclear physics. And then went on to pursue his PhD at Bombay University, and where he was working.
Esoteric, huh?
Nothing. Very, very practical, very, very down to earth, and very rational. So everything has scientific temper, that whole thing.
Yes.
So he started thinking, am I missing out on something by not looking at the spiritual aspects of life? And so after he went back to Bombay, he started to look at books within the library. And then he started visiting one place called Yoga Shakti Mission in Bombay. And there he met one Guruji, Krishnamurti, who was doing pujas for Lalita Devi. So that was his first introduction to Lalita Devi. Of course, Amma used to always chant the Lalita Sahasranamam. It was a daily thing for her. And she was taught by her grandmother. So this has been there in the families for generations. But he became aware of it, rather rediscovered Lalita after going back to Bombay. And he used to accompany this Guruji, and he gave him some mantras. And then with those mantras, he started having some visions again. This time it was Saraswati Devi, who would appear in his visions, and she would show him many, many different beautiful things, different Sanskrit texts. And these were from the Upanishads, from the Vedas, and he would be able to read them in the meditation itself. And after coming out of the meditation, he would wonder, it was such a good text, but I don't remember the full stanza now, or all the stanzas. He would go back to the library and then take out the first book, the first page he opened would be the exact same thing. So in this way, Saraswati educated him in all these many things. And of course, she also gave him many very pleasant, beautiful experiences where they are walking together hand in hand. And as she puts her foot forward, there's a lotus that appears. The next foot forward, a lotus. So before her foot touches the ground, there's a lotus which comes up, and she's just holding his hand. So there are many beautiful experiences like that. He also had different experiences which got him thinking whether I am on the right path or not. And then he took the opportunity to come and meet one other Guruji here at Visakhapatnam, Anakapalli Guru Garu. And he said, I will not give you the answers to your questions, but I'll give you mantras. Guruji said, I don't want mantras, I have the mantras. So then he said, no, I'll give you the mantras will give you the answers. So he had no choice but to take those mantras. Then he took those mantras, and then in the meantime, he was getting extremely disillusioned with the nature of his work. So you see, because internally he was going very deep, he was having all these great, wonderful experiences and, understanding his true nature. But at the same time, he was involved in a defense project. So he was using his creative energies to create something which is ultimately destructive in nature. So he was not feeling good about that whole
Yeah,
thing.
it's like being pulled in two totally
Pulled
different
into, yeah, he was
directions.
feeling torn apart.
Yes.
So then he thought maybe he should take a break, go on a sabbatical. So that's when went to Zambia for 2 years, and then came back from Zambia after 2 years, and still the pull was even greater. That being torn apart was much, much greater. He had to take a call. That was a kind of a crossroads.
Yes.
And he discussed with Amma, because anything they would do, it's always together. Because we are 3 daughters and we were still studying, or none of us had kind of graduated and moved on in life. So it was a tough decision, because you're leaving your job.
Yes.
And he still had about 12 years of service. So then he discussed, and Amma said only one thing: wherever you are, we are all there. We are together. So then
So
he came.
beautiful, no?
Yes. Yeah. So then, since Vizag is the native ancestral hometown, so he came back here. No fixed agenda in mind, but he was continuing with his sadhana. And we used to give discourses every Sunday. And then this time, Bala started appearing to him, and this time in a physical form, not in the meditation, not while he's doing the mantra japa, but in a physical form. None of us could see her. Only he would be able to see her, and she was about 7-8 years.
So maybe
that
people
age.
that don't know who Bala is, right?
Yeah.
She's a child.
She's a child form of the goddess herself. She used to appear like here about 7-8 years, and then she used to call him Nannagaru. Nannagaru means father in Telugu. And she used to keep asking him, Nannagaru, naku illu kattandi, which means build a house for me. So he was always wondering, what does she mean by this? Build a house for me, build a house for me. Then one day he asked her, what do you mean by that? Then she showed him the vision of this temple.
Wow.
Before it was constructed, before we knew about anything, she showed him the vision and said, this is what I want you to construct for me. And he was like totally taken aback. He said, oh my God, I can't do this. I mean, I'm not an architect. I don't have any resources to do that kind of a thing. But she was so insistent. She was like, no, you are the one who has to do it. And he also consulted his guru, Anakapalli Gurugar. He said, no, don't go anywhere near that. Bala is very playful and she'll make you do all sorts of things. She will, say no, say no, say no. But then she was further persistent, and, she said, why do you worry? It's my sankalpa.
Yes.
It is my intention that this happened. And you are just a tool in my hands. I will be there, don't worry. Then she started showing him different kinds of models of temples to build. Some were so complex and so crazy. I mean, Guruji started lifting his hands in despair. No, I can't do this. She showed him things like, Angkor Wat in Cambodia. That was like so complex and all. And he said, no, I can't do it. Then finally she showed him the Sri Chakra. And then he said, okay, Sri Chakra at least is something that I can relate to. I understand what it looks like. So he was kind of, okay, Sri Chakra seems doable because I know how it looks like. You have the square and then you have the 16 petal lotus and so on. So he felt, okay, but very, very cautiously, okay. But then he asked her, how do I start? Where do I start? I don't have a clue of how to go ahead. That you also have to tell me that thing as well. So then she told him, you first make a model of the whole temple in wood. So he got a carpenter. She told him to construct a wooden model of the temple as it is. And then he was to take that wooden model and go and place it in one of the Durga temples in Visakhapatnam city. So he got that done. Then 10 days later, the temple people came back and said, why did you put this thing here? We didn't ask for it. Please take it back, please. So he had to bring it back and then say, okay, now what? So at every stage, she was kind of guiding him, okay, this is what you need to do next. So then she said, now you have to conduct a big yajna spanning over 16 days.
Wow.
And it was a lot of rituals, all the way starting from early morning Surya Namaskaras to Rudrabhishekams to Sahasralingarchana. That's where you make all those 1,000 Shivalingas and placed in the form of a Shivalinga, and the puja is done to that. Then different kinds of homas during the day. So everything from morning to evening, Kumkum Puja, the whole works.
Wow.
And it was such a magnificent thing. It was spread over 16 days, and to lead that kind of effort, you required somebody who was had a very good Vedic standing, Vedic scholar. So contacted one person from near Vijayanagaram, and he came and he brought 108 Ritviks with him. Ritviks are priests,
Yes.
okay, who are given the charge of actually doing certain things. So several would be doing Surya Namaskaras, some would be doing this Rudrabhishekam, like that. Everybody is given different duties and he is the one who's managing everybody.
Yes.
So that was for a period of 16 whole days and it was a huge thing. This was way back in the year 1983 in Vishakhapatnam. During that time, every day he used to announce in the evenings that there is this kind of a sankalpa that Devi has asked of me to build a temple in the form of a Sri Chakra. And he would just share that and not ask for donation, nothing. He would just share that, you know. And then on the third or fourth day, a family came up and said, you have such a great sankalpa and we would like to contribute to that. We have some land, 3 acres of land, we would like to donate that land to you. So you can use it in the way you feel fit. So he said, okay, thank you very much. And then after the whole 16 days was over and everything, then he came down to this place. It was just totally only cashew nut plantations. Only cashew nut plantations, no road, no village. There's no village here. It was just a land like that with the hills and everything.
Yes.
It took him some time to actually find the place and locate the 3 acres because he was not a very worldly wise man at all. He was more into his research, his science and those kinds of things rather than understanding these things. But then finally he understood where it was. And here today where we see the Kamakhya temple, the hillock, the small hillock, where the Kamakhya Peetham is, there when he came the first time itself, he saw that it is a triangular shaped, the Swayambhu Peetham. Swayambhu means something which has emerged by itself naturally. It is not an idol which is made and then kept for a specific purpose, but the Peetham was a natural made Peetham. So he used to sit there and meditate. And several occasions he had very deep experiences. One where the Divine Mother herself appeared and the other where he actually had the experience of many people sitting around Homakunda just like this and he was inside the Homakunda while they are performing the Homa. And at the end of the Homa, when they do the Purnahuti, they place something very heavy inside the Homakunda. So after he came out of his meditation, he felt maybe there is something here and he got that a place dug up and there he found a Panchaloha Sri Yantra, what they call Panchadhatu, that. So, and it was obviously very old. And then he inquired in the surrounding villages and they said that about 250 to 300 years ago, there used to be an Agraharam here. Agraharam means it's like a small colony of Brahmins who used to stay here and used to regularly do different kinds of homas and pujas and all of that. So then he understood that yes, this place was indeed destined to be the place where the temple is constructed. And they had done it so many years ago. They had prepared the ground. So you can see this plan is not a simple 1-year plan or 2-year plan, but the seed for such a magnificent thing to come up has been sown much, much earlier.
Yes.
And also with the darshan of Devi herself, I think it was clear to him that yes, this indeed is the place where the temple has to be constructed. And when he had darshan of Devi, she asked him, will you do puja to me? And he said, of course, but I didn't bring any articles of worship, like you need flowers, you need water, you need something to offer as prasad, nothing. So then she said, don't worry, and she materialized everything. And before he was able to start the puja, she bent down and touched his feet. He was totally taken aback and he said, I am the one who's worshipping you. Why are you doing this? She said, you are going to be a guru to so many thousands and thousands of people. And you have to teach them Sri Vidya. And I am in each and every single one of them. So to denote that, I am touching your feet. So she said, I am in each and every single one of them. And after he finished the puja and everything, then she took him by the hand and brought him to this place here where today the temple is standing. And she told him, this is where you are going to construct the temple. You are going to make all the Khadgamala Devis who have their respective places within the Sri Chakra. At the Bindusthanam, at the central point, that is where you are going to install Rajarajeshwari Devi. And then she said, I am Kamakhya. And then she disappeared. So
Only
that much. So he got his purpose.
Yes.
He understood this is what I need to do.
Yes.
But how does he proceed?
How?
For this kind of a thing, first of all, you need plans, you need drawings. So much stuff is required. And all of that again requires money.
Yes.
And how much money did he have? He only had some fund, which he was given by his organization where he was working. And he has to also, see, he's a family man. he cannot just give up on his family and walk away and say, okay, I'm doing my stuff, you guys take care of yourselves. But so he was very conscious of that. And so whatever money he received from the organization, made it into 5 parts. So one each for each of the 3 daughters, one for Devi and one for him and Amma. So they two are together 1 unit. So 5 units of money. So with that 1 unit of those 5, he started, okay, now what do I do with this? So he approached some very good architects in Bombay and told him about the project, and then they gave the architectural drawings and everything. But then to start again, you need people, you need money. It was a very uphill task for most
each
part.
step, no?
Each
It's
step,
like
literally each step. See, there was no road also here.
Yes.
To get to this place itself from Visakhapatnam, it's 35 kilometers. And then while staying here, if you want to start constructing something, there's so much material and all that you need to have. So the very first 2 temples that got constructed were the Kamakhya Peetham and also on top of the hill, a Shivalayam.
Yes.
And in the Shivalayam, Rajarajeshwara Swami, who is the Kshetrapalaka, the protector of the place, he was installed. So both these were consecrated even before this main temple. This took some time to build. The foundation stone for the Sri Yantra Mahameru temple was laid in 1983 in October. Okay, but the construction for these 2 started first. And every step of the way, it was a test in the sense, how is he going to do it? Are we getting enough funds for it? And Amma particularly recalls when they were doing the Prana Pratishtha ceremony for the Kamakhya and the Shivalayam, there was no rain anywhere else except on that hill. And it was raining so heavily. It was a terrible outpour of rain just on that hill. And they had to climb on top of the Shivalayam, where there's another small Sri Chakra. You've seen that? And Amma was saying, no, I can't go up in this. But the priest said, no, Amma, you have to come. Without you, he cannot do it.
Yes.
So she had to also climb up, and they did it. And then for this temple, it took about 7 years to complete the basic structure of the temple. Every step of the way, wherever he had a problem, I mean, you have the drawings, but you need to know how to interpret the drawings. And you need engineers, but there were no site engineers. Okay, so initially we just had one large hut which was constructed there where the Simhadwaram is there today. Just one large hut. We would stay there, and from there all the activities would be done. Guruji's elder sister, so they are actually a family of 3 children. So elder sister, himself, and a younger brother. So her elder sister was very, very supportive, and she used to stay here all alone. All alone.
And it's jungle. It is a
jungle.
It's
and
not
you
like,
have,
oh, you're in a
you have
city
snakes and scorpions and all of those things. And nobody else, not a soul for miles, And she used to stay here, and Guruji and Amma would be in Vizag, and then they would come here 2 to 3 times a week. But still, staying here alone at night is definitely, it's not an easy thing at all. But she was a very brave lady.
Wow.
So, yes, and she also has had many experiences of Devi. There were several times when he was in a quandary. How should I proceed next? Like this next slab, for example, when they're pouring the concrete slab, he would have a doubt, okay, how does this go? And then he would just close his eyes and think of Devi, and then Bala would appear again in front of him. And she would say, okay, now, these are the beams, and these are the number of rods that you should put in. All the technical details she would give him. And he would ask her, is it okay? Will it stand? She said, yes, it's all good. And then sometimes some senior engineers would come just to see. And then they would say, you're doing this, but I don't think it's going to stand. And so people are here to give you unsolicited advice on something that, it's not going to work, but they're not ready to lend a hand to say, actually come down and do it. Yeah. He did have some help, some persons in Vizag who would come and give some suggestions on this is how you can do it, but that was like once a month, things like that. But nevertheless, so this took about 7 years, just the bare bones skeletal structure. But then the main heart of the whole thing is all the Khadgamala deities in their respective positions in the Sri Yantra. Now, he was again in a quandary because the forms of these Devis are not given in one particular book. The names are there in the Devi Khadgamala Stotram. But the forms, how do they look like? Are they seated? Are they standing? How many hands do they have? How many heads do they have? What do they have in there? Is not given.
Yes.
Only some of them are known, like the Ashtamatrikas, Brahmi, Maheshwari, and so on, but not the others. So then he asked again. So his go-to is Bala. She would appear, okay, what do I do now? Tell me the next thing. Then she said, okay, take each name of the Devi, do mantra japa with that name, and she will appear to you. Sometimes it took 30 days, sometimes it took more than that. And as and how the Devi showed herself, showed her form to him, that is how he got a sculptor. Sculptor was staying here for about 3 years.
Wow.
3-4 years, and then he made all of these sculptures like that. So finally in 1994, along with all the Khadgamala Devatas at the Bindusthanam, Rajarajeshwari Devi were consecrated in a very grand Kumbhabhishekam in 1994. So it took almost 11 years from 83 to 94.
Wow.
So this was a huge, but from the very beginning, even before doing the Devi Yagam also, he had established a trust called Sri Vidya Trust. And one of the main objectives of this trust was to build a temple of learning. So it's not just a temple. It's a temple of learning. And learning what? Learning Sri Vidya. So Sri Vidya, to those who may want to know more, is the knowledge about how to get closer to the Divine Mother, to put it very, very simply. Okay. And of course, there are very, very deep rituals and practices, and they can be expanded to kind of like the grandmama of Da Vinci Code. You can expand it to very huge thing, or you can make it into very, very simplistic practices also. So if there is somebody who really loves doing rituals, there's a vast wealth of rituals that can be performed, which all help you to get closer to your own true nature, that is the divine nature, that is Devi herself. Or if you cannot do the rituals, you just mantra japa is enough, or meditations, all of that can be done. But Guruji's idea was that everybody should come here to learn and transform themselves. It was not just to come here and just like any other temple go and pray and do some puja and break a coconut and say, oh, thank you very much, or please give me this, please give me that, but actually come here to transform yourselves. So
how does that work practically? Because if you walk in, you think, oh, okay, it's a temple, but how are you also facilitating learning? How do you help people? Because Sri Vidya, it's huge. I mean, it's so vast, the knowledge. And now I'm seeing the school for girls that's here, and I see the people that come through to do courses. So how does it work?
Yeah, Sri Vidya, first of all, we need to understand that Sri Vidya for centuries has been a very, very Gupta Vidya, which is a very closely guarded secret Vidya, not taught to hardly anybody, only very, very chosen people, and those two have to be Brahmin and male. And women could also learn, but if they were married into that household and they were deemed fit to learn. So there was several filters of being eligible to get into that. But Guruji demystified all of that, and he said, Devi, he put it very simply, he said, Devi is for everybody and of everybody. You cannot distinguish that, okay, only men have to learn, women cannot learn, or only this caste of people should learn, or these people are not eligible, everybody. So she is the mother for everyone. You cannot say that, no, you can't learn, you can't learn. But for everybody to be able to practice, to understand what it is, the texts, all of the scriptures and everything are in Sanskrit. And not just plain Sanskrit, it is very heavily coded. So you have to have a decoder to understand what it really means. And so while it is describing something that you have to do, there is always also several layers of meanings. So what Guruji did was demystifying all of this, taking the essence of all of these practices, the texts, the rituals and everything, and putting it into very, very simple formats for even lay persons to understand. People don't need to know Sanskrit. If they can understand to just pronounce the mantras, fine, that is good. Okay, and then describing to them not just what to do, but why, what and how, all these three. So that is what really appeals to people, because in these days everybody first wants to know, why should I do this, why is this like that, and so on, right? So that's what he did. He was always in this mode of teaching. Even while the temple was being constructed, he was going all over the world to help people understand, and he was so very generous with his teachings. He was never saying that, oh, you come and do this, you give me that, then I'll give you this teaching. Nothing. It was always, wherever he would go, he was always very up to date with the technology, because he believed that technology is something that can help us to accelerate this process of making this available to everybody and accessible to everyone. It would either be on a flash drive or a hard disk or a CD or something like that, that he would share with people, say, here, these are a set of affirmations that you can do. So as you was asking, simple practical things, sets of affirmations that you can practice on a daily basis, some visualizations that help you to overcome certain fears, certain kinds of problems that you have in life. It's really starting from where you are.
Yes.
Sometimes we have fears of we don't have a job, or we are in a very, I would say, a materialistic groundedness that we feel we cannot get out of. So he was of the opinion that unless you are able to come out of that materialistic perspective, then only you will be able to start appreciating the spiritual aspect. So you have to be given something or some injections kind of thing to help you to come out of that materialistic. So there is where all these meditations, the affirmations, the visualizations, all of those were designed in order to help people do that. Also some small pujas which are done here in the temple, which our priestesses facilitate, which are the Ashtamatruka Abhishekams. So each of these Ashtamatrukas, do the various kinds of things which help us in, some for a job, for education, for marriage, for relationships, for health, and so on and so forth. And he always believed that women are the true embodiments of Devi. Of course, Devi is the universal consciousness and she resides in everybody, male, female, and all genders. But though traditionally it is held that women should not be doing puja, should not be doing homa, should not be doing any of these, but he always held that women should be taught everything. And he was always this person who manasa, vacha, karman, what he thinks is what he says and what he does. So they're all very, very aligned. And in that fashion, he used to teach very, very painstakingly. I remember 25, 30 years ago, he would give these young girls, maybe 17, 18 years old, give them Walkmans with their headphones on, and the chants would be going on. That's how they would learn.
Yes.
The Yantra Puja, the Navavarna Puja, which is done to the Sri Chakra. And that is what he believed in. And that's how they also did, fearlessly. They have no fear at all. Oh, can I do it? There's no holding back of oneself. It's, yes, Guruji said, I can do it, I will do it. That kind of a confidence that was developed.
So revolutionary,
It
actually.
is, absolutely.
Here in India, it's so rare to go into a temple and hear a female voice chanting. This is something that when I first got here, I was like, oh, I've spent 20 years in India. It's not the first time I stepped in, but it's you don't hear women's voices doing the rituals. You don't you don't see women in this empowered position where they're the ones touching the murtis and they're the ones performing. And it seems like a little thing, but it's actually tremendous what this is. It's a total revolution. And also the thing with the castes. Guruji seems to have just gone in and gone, nope, we're not doing it the old way. There needs to be something new.
Yeah, he was very revolutionary that way. He was a very soft-spoken person, but very radical in his approach and his thoughts. And he, with that soft-spoken nature, he just broke open everything. Of course, he did face a lot of criticism in initial days. People coming up to him and saying, how can you teach this to all these kinds of people? Women are not supposed to be taught, all of these things. He would just fold his hand and say, this is what Devi has instructed me to do. And that's what I'm just following her guidance and her orders, that's all. So that was it for him. So Devipuram, in his view, Devipuram was not just a physical, this geographical place where you come to these temples and you worship and go. But Devipuram is actually a place in everybody's heart, because that is where Devi resides, in everybody's hearts. So this is the entire concept of Devipuram, is that everybody should find their own true purpose and their true nature. And Devipuram is here to help people to find that. We now have online courses as well, where we help people to understand these. And there's a set of initial practices that we give people that help them to understand that there are ritualistic aspects, there are meditative practices, all these things. So whatever is comfortable for them, whatever is suitable for them, they can go ahead and take that further. So it's not to say that everybody has to follow only one path, but there are several things. It's like a bouquet of things. You choose what you would like from there and go ahead and do it. It is enough that you are actually worshipping or starting to approach the Divine Mother. She herself will pull you 10 steps. That's what he would always say. You take one step towards Devi. She will pull you the 10 steps towards her. So that is what he believed in, that is what Amma believed in, and that is what all of us here are striving to, make his vision a reality, that of making Sri Vidya available and accessible for everybody across the globe. And we also do it in not just only the teaching ways, but also there are two special programs that he had devised, which are called the Siri Jyoti Puja and also the Kalavahana. So as I said earlier, your thought, your speech and your action all being aligned. So in the same way, the way he believed that everybody is a personification of the Divine Mother, the Kalavahana is where you are worshipping the individual as the Divine Mother herself. So you're not worshipping the mother in the form of the idol. you're worshipping the mother in a living human being. Or it could be male or female, doesn't matter. It's the internal consciousness that matters. So Kalavahana is a process where you are worshipped as the goddess herself. And this process, this puja, it's a 1 hour puja which is done in the Kamakhya Peetham. And it's a totally different experience. You do not need to have your eyes open. You're just sitting with your eyes closed and you are receiving the Kalavahana. All the attributes of Devi are being invoked into you, and it's a beautiful experience. So that was one empowerment ritual which he wanted to share with the world.
Would you say that that is almost like the objective of all of this practice, and all of this is for us to be able to really feel that
Yes.
that Devi resides
Yes,
in us,
yes,
that we
yes.
are not separate from her, that
Absolutely.
that we just walk around
Yeah.
in these bodies, but actually what
True.
is moving the body is her.
Yes, yes, absolutely right.
And so all of Sri Vidya, would you say, is it's just different ways of getting into that door?
Correct.
The lights come on to affirm.
Right. Yeah. And the other ritual that he actually espoused was the Sirijyoti Puja, where we are worshipping the Sri Chakra with flowers and lights, and everybody sits all around. How many ever people are there? 100 people, 200 people. They can sit all around and together worship the Sri Chakra. So these are the two rituals which we are using also to take across to many people, because there has to be a starting point somewhere for people to get into it. So once you get them in, then Devi herself will guide.
Yes.
It's not for us. Sometimes we end up thinking, oh, I am doing this, I am doing this, I am doing that. But it's not us. It's her who is guiding every step of the way, putting the thought into our heads, making us do things, making us feel that, oh, I'm doing it, I'm so great. But at the end of the day, it's not you, it's her. It's her and her alone.
Yes.
So that's the thing here. And so we have all these women priestesses who do the homa. Sometimes there are people who come for a homa and then they are waiting and waiting for a man to appear and actually do the homa. But sorry, folks. And then we do tell them, when new people come, we have to tell them that this is the thing of the place, this is what Guruji believed in. And they're not doing it as a job. It's part of their upasana, their sadhana. They are also Sri Vidya Upasakas and they are offering this as a service. So that is the kind of place that all of you are welcome to come to Devipuram and visit and receive the Kalavahana, and also stay here and offer worship to Devi herself. It's a magical place because when you come here, you don't feel like going. Guruji used to always
can
say that
attest
when
to
people
that.
come here, yeah, I know.
Remember last time I was like, I don't want to go.
Yeah, yeah. So Guruji always used to say that when people come to Devipuram, they should feel as if they've come home.
Yes.
So
And I think it works. I think his. Do you feel that it's challenging now for you and your sisters and Amma to hold this space now that Guruji is no longer in the body? Or does it feel like it's just a continuation, like it's a flow and it's okay?
well, it is sometimes a bit of a challenge to understand things. So that's where the spiritual practices also come in helpful, because without that spiritual grounding, that kind of a centering, it's difficult. This is not like managing an organization, just any organization. It's not. Your corporate ways cannot work here.
No.
They don't work here. You may make innumerable number of plans and strategies and everything, but ultimately her things are the ones that work.
Yes.
And so, yeah, so we do learn these things also.
Yes, I bet.
Yeah.
And I watch you here doing Homam 3 hours a day, every day, and it's like, but I see you don't seem tired. You don't seem run down. It's like she's also helping you to hold it.
Yes,
no?
yes,
Like
yes,
there's
obviously, yeah.
There's a force that wants to be here,
Correct.
and you're just one of the hands, right?
Right.
What would you say is the right disposition if somebody doesn't know anything about Sri Vidya? They don't know if they're interested, not interested. They're curious, but they don't know if it's for them. Would those kind of people still be welcome to come and feel
Sure.
and try? What's the right disposition? Like, what's the right attitude to come toward this practice, would you say?
Open-minded, curious. That's all.
Curious. I love curious, you know?
Curious
because
and
it's like-
open-minded. It's fine. I mean, they can come and ask questions.
Yes.
That's fine.
Yes.
So because only when you ask questions, it means that you are truly interested.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's just, okay. But if you're interested, that's when you start thinking about it. And when you think, you get the questions.
Yes.
And then you start asking the questions, that's when the answers start coming to you in different forms.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. So everybody is welcome. And so it's not that people have to be a Hindu to come here. People of all faiths do come here, and they've lot of people of all faiths have also learned Vidya and been practicing and so on.
Yes.
And sometimes we are also very surprised when the kind of experiences, the kind of things that they share later on with us, that this is what has been happening. The guidance of the Guru is so overwhelming. And anytime they have a problem, all they do is just close the eyes and then say the Guru mantra and leave all the challenges. And then they say, they come back to us and then they say, this is what happened. And then I prayed like this and I got the solution like this. So people often think, okay, it's just a physical form of the Guru. It's not the physical. The Guru is not a physical form alone.
Yes.
Right? In fact, Guruji himself used to say, and Amma says this a lot, that Guruji always used to say, I can do so much more when I'm not in the physical form. The physical form has its limitations.
Yes.
Being in a physical form, you have certain limitations. But when you're not in the physical form, you're limitless, you're boundless. So Guruji, even nowadays, when newer students, people have been talking to us of so many wonderful experiences that they've seen visions of Guruji, and so many things which have been happening. Everybody is welcome to come. There are no restrictions or anything of that sort.
Would you say that the Guru is then more of a principle? Like it's
Yes,
something
it's a
that
tattva.
someone can embody in a moment, and it can be channeled through them.
Yes.
And then when they leave the body, the principle is still.
Yes, that's how it is.
The
That's why
principle is still-
so when we say we have something called a Guru Namavali, which is the names of the Guru. And it's not about, okay, his name is so-and-so, his name is so, but actually it has all the 36 tattvas, it has all the different planets, it has the different Mahavakyas, Aham Brahmasmi and all these Mahavakyas.
Yes.
And it has all the Yogini Devata's names. So Guru is not just, okay, a person who's self-realized, but is the medium through which you also can be self-realized.
Yes.
He used to always say, don't put me on a pedestal and don't worship me. It's not me, worship Devi. So that's why in 2012, I think, he announced that Devi is the real Guru here. So you don't need any physical gurus, so okay, next after this person. No, Devi is the real Guru here.
Yes.
All of us are serving her.
Yes.
That's it.
Very beautiful. Very beautiful. I wanted to ask a little bit about Guruji because very few people will have known him as well as you did, you know? Because for me, when I read his books and I hear his stories and I listen to the lectures, it's like incomprehensible that he was this nuclear physicist, you know, this like super rational, and then he did this insurmountable leap, right? To the point where his whole life, everything
Changed.
like was 100% for Devi. And completely irrational, you know. Oh, so a little girl
From
appeared.
rational to yes.
You know, like
So 180 degrees.
a little girl appeared and she told me that I need to build the temple like this.
Yes,
She's
yes.
the engineer. You know, it's like,
Yes.
wait, what? And also when I listen to him, like the softness of him, there's something just so beautiful in his way. And this particular phrase, which is that,
Yes.
do what you will.
Yes.
Can you just speak a little bit about Guruji and of course you have a very specific viewpoint, right? Because Rama is his daughter. In case you didn't get that yet.
Yeah.
But who was this man, you know? What was he like? What was it like to be his daughter?
Oh, it was fun.
I bet.
Yeah. As I said earlier, he was very, very soft-natured. So we've never heard a harsh word from him or anything like that. I remember I got a scolding only once in my life. That was when my cousin had very chubby cheeks and I pinched him on his cheeks. So that's when he gave me a slap. That's all. That's all, nothing else. One time for the entire life. That's it. That's the kind of a person, very, very soft-natured. And of course, a lot of time when he was working in Bombay, totally engrossed in his research and everything, he would oftentimes just forget how old we were, which grade we were studying in. Somebody would come home and then very absent-minded, and they would ask, you know, people ask him, they come, okay, what are your children studying? And then he would say, the grade we were studying maybe 2 years ago. And then we would shout from inside, no, we are in this grade now. One time he invited somebody home for dinner and he forgot to tell Amma that he'd invited them. And they came home and then Amma gave them some coffee, some tiffin, something to eat. And they were still not leaving. Then Amma didn't know. And I think they kind of got the hint and then, you know, they left because nothing else was being offered. After some time, then when Amma was serving dinner, then he realized, he said, I invited them for dinner. And then, so he was like that, very absent-minded, but also very playful. extremely playful and experimentative. Like he would experiment with food a lot. He would love making all kinds of concoctions with mixing some tomatoes, take some tomatoes, chop them, mix some chili powder and some sugar and God knows what. And Amma would say, no, please go out of the kitchen. I can't have these. He was extremely fond of, munchies, all kinds of crunchy munchy things. Pakode was his favorite. And this experimentation with food also, there was one food scientist in Syracuse. So he would tell him different kinds of things like, here you have cashew still. So with the cashew fruit, can we make some juice? Can we make something? What can we do? How can we process the cashew nut? So it's not just about fun things at home, but also for the larger society.
Yes.
What are the things that we can do? And so once a scientist, always a scientist. So in fact, in the rural areas all around, there used to always be these only thatched kind of huts. And once there was a fire in one of the villages about 3 kilometers away, and all the huts were just burnt down. So that's when he looked at this more closely and he said, can we do something about this?
Right.
So this was the year 1992. And at that time, there was an earthquake in another part of India, in Maharashtra, and they had constructed something called the domes. They were called the Pabel domes or something like that. And this is actually based on Buckminster Fuller's dome concept. So after that, we came back and then we also constructed some experimental domes here. There was actually a Spanish gentleman staying here, family, and we constructed some experimental domes. So the idea was to make something that is durable, extremely low cost, and something that people can stay in. So that's why the domes were constructed, and we also then thereafter gave this as a model to several villages and so on.
Very nice.
Apart from this, also working with women. So some of the rural development projects, working with women. So women, as he always knew that women are an extremely passionate driving force.
Yes.
So when they're passionate about something, then you can actually galvanize them into action much better than men. So at that time in this area and some other places in Andhra Pradesh, there was an entire movement where women were leading against arak, which is a kind of a very, liquor which is brewed from some of the trees, fruits of the trees. So, and the men used to be drinking and lots of physical abuse, and some women in some village, they got totally fed up and they started that movement. And that was a huge movement, and a lot of good stuff came out of that. But after that, we said, okay, these women have anyway galvanized together. Let's start. So then we created cooperatives for these women. And that's still running today. Lots, about 15,000 women. And they've been saving money very regularly. So they've got about millions of rupees saved, and they keep rotating. It's like a credit co-op.
Wow.
Yeah, cooperative. So they save money and then they take the money as loans and so on. So he was very instrumental in ensuring that that kind of work gets done. So always technology oriented. Many times his disciples who were in the US and all, when he used to go to the US, he used to also go and address the students in the universities. Because on the one side science and the other side spirituality. So how he looked at this entire thing from both angles, from both perspectives, the most irrational and the very rational. So how and where can you find a meeting point between these two? So when he used to explain to them, he would talk about physics and neutrons and then somehow make them understand how this all fit in, especially the quantum physics aspect of it. So when they would come to Devipuram to visit him and they would see him sitting at his computer and creating a video using the latest video technology, and they would say, Guruji, this has only just come out, and he would teach himself. He was self-taught. He would learn all of these things by himself and create, so many of these videos that you see on Devipuram's YouTube channel, especially the earlier ones, all made by him, like the concept, the recording, the editing, the sound, everything, literally him. That's how he was. Very, very experimental and not limited. And the other thing I would say is that, and we saw this as we were growing up, there was never a sense of it's only I, me and my family, and especially as, his number of disciples started growing and, people there. So there's always used to be these women who would say, I'm Guruji's eldest daughter, I'm Guruji's eldest daughter. I said, how many eldest daughters does he have? But so it was always like that. So it was never a sense of only, okay, his sense of his identity was never I, me, myself and my family of 5 people. It was always the larger thing. And that's what we saw even growing up, and we were fine with it. We never had any issues about, okay, because when you have more people, it's always, everybody wants his time, they want his attention and everything. But we were fine with that.
Really?
Yes. Yes.
I would have been jealous personally.
no. No,
But
somehow. I mean,
somehow-
we were not jealous.
well, I'm sure you were modeled something very good from a very young age, and you.
I
must
don't
have
know
just
how, but
learned.
yeah. Yeah, but we were not jealous.
That's great. And how did you feel about this project? Because were you already out of the house, or were you still living?
No,
with
no,
them
I
and
was just
started?
into college at the
Okay.
time. Yeah.
And were you like, what is he doing? Is
Yeah,
it-
yeah, yeah. Yeah, all of that was there because especially all the Khatgamala Devatas and everything, some of them are very provocative
Yes.
postures. And, but I remember one particular day I was like, say, how can he even build this kind of a thing? And I was very, very upset and indignation. And I remember walking all the way from here, the temple, up to the ashram. And I was intent on confronting him. And by the time I went there, I didn't say anything. It just went off. I don't know what happened. I just don't know what happened.
Interesting.
That was quite this thing. But
Yes.
yeah, but the way he approached, so it is like, a lot of people are into Sri Vidya, a lot of people, you have Sri Vidya Upasakas, but taking the true essence of what that means and actually living that.
Yes.
So, for example, he created a small daily prayer, which in Telugu, but it says that Amma Rajarajeshwari, I see you in every single being. So you imagine, so you're repeating that every single day, you will start to see the Devi herself in the person who's tending to the cows, in the person who's come, an old lady who's come to the temple, somebody who's asking for some food. You have to, that pushes you to, see things like that. It's not just, and yeah, so Sri Vidya, for him, Sri Vidya is not something like, okay, you do your puja for 3 hours or 4 hours or 10 hours or whatever, and then the rest of the time you be whoever you are. You cannot be this one person. There's no Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde over here.
Yes.
Everything is that one person. And whatever you're experiencing, whatever you're doing, everything you're offering back to Devi. That was an extremely important part. So he was never conventional about, you have to make all this, fancy naivedyams and then put it over there. You'd say, you have your cup of coffee in the morning, offer it to Devi first and then take that.
Yes.
So he was so practical about these things and making it much more easier, especially for people with families. So he did not say that you have to renounce and go to the Himalayas and do all of this. Fine, you have your family, you have your job, your business, you have your commitments to take care of, take care. But do something about this as well.
Yes.
Make Devi a part of your life.
Yes.
It is not a separate compartment. It is the very fabric of your being. So how do you do that?
Yes. It's very beautiful. It's very beautiful. Huh? So it's so inclusive, right?
Absolutely.
You don't have to be somewhere to start. All you have to do is exist.
Yes.
It's for you. It's available.
Yes.
Because I think that a lot of times in India it feels prohibitive.
Yes.
Oh, I'm not Brahmin. Oh, I'm not a man. Oh,
Yes.
I'm not this. Oh, I don't have money, for example, to make these big offerings. I can't hire this person to do this puja for
Right.
me. It's like there feels like there's all of these obstacles, and
Yeah.
one of the most beautiful things with Guruji is it felt like he just went, nah,
Yeah.
like no, I'm not accepting these obstacles.
Yes, yes.
You are Devi, whoever you are,
Yes.
and you have a right to her, whoever you are,
Correct.
and you can practice like this or like this or like this or like
Yeah. He would say even if you have 10 minutes, it's fine.
Yes.
Nobody, not many people would say that. They would say, no, you have to do. So very, very, very different cut from the others. So that's what he truly believed in.
Yes.
It was not just something that's lip service from here, but
Yes.
actually something that he truly believed in, and he made sure.
Well, it's so beautiful also because he started so late in life, and it's like for many people it's like, no, you have to start at 6 years old and do it every day, and then so it's like he went from zero
so
to
it's always
to completion.
There's a lot of previous lifetimes.
For sure.
And yeah.
For sure.
So Devi brought him up to speed on all of that in his meditations.
Yes.
As I was telling you earlier, she showed him so many different things. So she
Absolutely.
brought him totally up to speed on all of it.
But it's also beautiful because it makes us feel like, well, that could be me also. Why not?
True.
Why
Of
not?
course, of
If I started late, if I'm not the right caste, if I'm not, it's like
And we do see many people like that coming to Devipuram, and they have been hearing Sanskrit mantras in their mind.
wow.
Where did they get it from?
Devi only, no?
Devi only. Some people are suddenly out of the blue, they see Devipuram's website, they see Devipuram's video, they see Guruji's video, out of the blue,
Yes.
and that's how they are led here. So when Devi wills it, people will come.
It will happen. Thank you so much, Rama Amma. Is there anything else you would like to say before we close? Anything I didn't ask? Anything we didn't touch on that you feel like is important?
I think we've covered.
Covered a lot. So thank you so much for taking the time. I'm
You're
so
welcome.
grateful to you, and hopefully she's gonna come to America and teach us there. No?
Yes,
So
sure,
we'll see what we can
definitely.
organize. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sri Matre Namaha.
Sri Matre Namaha.
Sri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Yo Namaha.